goosebumps every time, yeah, 713. To the 281, yeah, I'm riding. Why they on me? Why they on me? I'm flying, sipping low-key. I'm sipping low-key and honest, find a rider. I get those goosebumps every time you come around, yeah. You ease my mind, you make everything feel fine. Worry about those comments, I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too young, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time. I need the Heimlich, throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. When you're not around me, throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time.
Up the mugs. Yes, sir.
Tune.
You know what? The new intro is throwing me because I never know when it's going to quite cut in. Because normally it was like you got used to when it comes in. But we're live. Welcome to Loaded Mag NUFC, the fully loaded transfer show, the Thursday special, and we've got a very special guest for you making his debut that we'll bring on in just a second. I can see people coming into the live stream. Welcome in. Make sure you get your comments in and your questions in for Lee. I'm sure we'll be answering some questions as the show goes on. But first of all, most important thing, Daz, Chris, how are you on this fine Thursday evening?
Rider, I get those goosebumps every time. We'll have to mix that in maybe into the intro. You never know now that Lee's has joined us. But all good at me. Where's the silence? I'm kind of pissed off on one side because there's no signing yet, especially that I'm off tomorrow. And it's miserable rain on my first week of my holidays. But on the plus side, I'm on my holidays tomorrow. I'm off to Salou for a week tomorrow, so I can't be too pissed off, really, can I? Chris, how are you?
All good, mate. Still suffering a little bit with the man flu. Not gonna lie. Not much sympathy in the house either. But no, I'm good. I'm doing okay. I'm feeling much better than I was yesterday, so can't complain. Very, very dark and a bit moody today here in Liverpool. I don't know. It was dead sunny a couple of days ago, but yeah, it's gone a bit dark now. But yeah, other than that, boys, absolutely fine. And yeah, absolute privilege to have Lee on. I know we've been really keen to get him on in recent times, so to actually have him on is absolutely brilliant. So I'm really looking forward to speaking with Lee tonight. But Pete, how are you, mate? You good?
Very good, very good. Weather's not great where I am, exactly the same. But apparently, over the weekend, going to be about 27 degrees, I think, around the majority of the country. So the weather is going to pick up. And I've got to ask you, Chris, well, is Dad's been living under a rock? Because he said, where's the signings? The signings.
I know, but you know what I mean. Because we celebrated William coming last week. I want something else this week. I'm greedy, Pete. I'm too greedy. And I want a big signing as well on top of that. So I'm not the only one. I know I'm not the only one feeling like that.
I hear it absolutely, and we all do. We want that big signing, and hopefully we'll get that discussion going with Lee, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. I'm just going to run through as quickly as I possibly can because there's so many, and it feels like they're fighting to get in there first with these tunes. Yeah. Very early doors. There was one at 4 minutes past 1 this afternoon, which is early doors. I have to
Dedication.
say. Yeah, that's Dangle 250. Welcome in. Thank you for your tune, the Crimson Lip. Great to have you in as well as Bill. Kaluds, is that how you pronounce it? We'll get there in the end. But welcome in nonetheless. Geordie Tune for Life, great to have you in, along with Gary, Leon, always in the house, Colin, along with Ian. We've got Kieran in the house, great to have you. Resident Spanner in the house, hope you're well, Lisa. RF, great to see you in there. I don't think I've seen RF in the chat before, so welcome to the channel. We've got David in the house, of course. Isaac, what I want, still the greatest name in our chat. Brilliant stuff. Lee Errington, great to have you in there as well. Nobby Clark, pleasure as always. DB and Kendo, great to have you in there. They're coming through so quick, I can't keep up with them. We've got Key in there. We've got Chris, great to have you, Chris. Claire said in the chat as the intro was going on, new intro. Where have you been?
Claire.
Where you been?
Claire.
You've already been in place. You're way behind, but great to have you in there on our resident spanner. Christopher, we've got Rich Joblin, great to have you in the chat tonight. And Jeff, brilliant stuff. Thank you for all your support of the channel. Make sure all of those that have put the tunes and everyone else that's watching, click that like, do all that good stuff. Thank you for watching. And if you're new, like I think RF might be, consider subscribing to the channel. But thank you for all your support. Now, let's not mess around. Let's get the main man in. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome him in for his debut. We have the chief NUFC writer of the Chronicle. We have Lee Ryder. So let's welcome in Lee.
Welcome, Lee.
How you doing, guys?
Welcome, Lee.
Good, mate. Oh, good.
Pleasure to have you on. Thank you for joining us on our show tonight. And like I said, Chris has mentioned it. It's been a while. We've been trying to get you in involved in one of our shows, but we were just saying before we went live, it's been a monstrous summer for you. It's been absolutely non-stop. Just come back from Japan. Just tell us a little bit about the trip and how busy was it? Was it one to remember?
Yeah, it was really one to remember, and I think it was hectic as well, which is good because there's just one event after another, and usually on these trips, people might look at them and think, it's a trip away, but there's a lot of activity goes on for us. There's press conferences. There was a fan networking event in Tokyo. There was the kit launch. There was the live training. There was the interviews with Eddie Howe. We spoke to Dan Byrne as well over there, Jamie Miley, Joe Willock. So it was just completely hectic, but we got loads of content out of it, and it was just a really good trip, and hot on the heels of Australia back in May as well. So it was. It's been quite a hectic period. That's probably the best way to put it.
Definitely. Yep. Just wanted to ask you this before we get into all things Newcastle United. That we've asked a number of guests that we've had on, journalists in particular, and for us, we were actually talking about this yesterday because we knew you were coming on. It was kind of like, we've been following your work for years now, even before we were even a channel. So we appreciate the work that you do for the Chronicle. And how different is it now reporting on Newcastle United under this new ownership? I know we've talked about it with other guests, but we always like to ask new guests that have come on, how different is it now reporting on Newcastle in comparison to what you had under the previous ownership?
I guess we were almost sort of chronicling the doom and gloom of the previous regime. Obviously, they did finish fifth at one point under Mike Ashley and Alan Pardew. But before that, we'd had a relegation. We'd had the whole Alan Shearer debacle when they said they were going to give him the job, then didn't give him the job. Yeah. And then after that, there was a second relegation. There was media bans. There was, you name it, we had it. And it was usually quite tough, really. There was a lot of to and fro between journalists and the club. We had the Steve Bruce, what was it, 2 or 3 years of Steve Bruce clashing in press conferences over relatively normal questions, really. And infamously, I had the sort of bust up with Steve Bruce at Old Trafford over the Zoom call when I called him out about the trip to Portugal, and it all went off on that one. And then the takeover came through, and then since then it's been a lot calmer, I would say, in terms of relationship between club and journalists. But I would say it's been more hectic. We've been all around the world, really. We've been at Japan, Australia, Saudi Arabia, the United States, and the club's trying to grow that global brand, and we've been part of that. So yeah, it's obviously much better. I'm a Newcastle fan as well. I want Newcastle to do well. Always did. And it's just a much more pleasant experience. And when you're sort of dealing with Eddie Howe, a lot of people have sort of tried to compare him with Kevin Keegan. I mean, I guess he's his own man, but I can see the similarities between the two men. But dealing with him is really good because he always gives you good, concise answers. He never seems to take a huff in a press conference, which we've had with other managers. So yeah, it's been a real pleasure so far.
Good to hear. Good to hear. And what you've said in terms of the feeling now is very similar to other journalists that have been on the channel too. They've said very, very similar. So good to hear from certainly from our perspective, being on the outside. But you were back there again today. You tweeted out earlier and you put, the impressive new media suite. They seem to be looking after you journalist guys, giving you got the new microphones now, and everything seems to be sort of top class. Impressive in there.
Yeah, I mean it's just next door to the training ground. It's the former home of the Northumberland FA where the reserves play, and it's a room that's been sort of refurbished. I think the whole building has now. It's under the club sort of guidance. The Northumberland FA have moved onto the Coast Road, which is near where I live. So to have the facilities is obviously much better. It's better for you guys because you can actually hear what the journalist is asking, rather than hearing muffled noises in the background and chairs moving around or whatever. It's just a much more professional environment. Really looked good. I think today got off to a real bang with Bruno Guimaraes being put up so we could ask him questions about his future. We got some good stuff from that. Eddie Howe talking about as best he can on transfers, giving him a few little hints. So I think overall, it was a really good debut for the new press room, and hopefully there's going to be a few new signings sitting on that table in the weeks to come.
Definitely. And simultaneously, as the press conference seemed to have started, we did get news of our new signing. And he is here. We need to refer to him as Will Asula. I apparently heard, not William. So Will Asula is in the house. He is signed for Newcastle United. You can see there with the shirt in hand with Eddie Howe. And he's already got to work, already in training with the boys today. Pictures came out on the brand new app. If anyone hasn't got it, the app is live, Newcastle United's app, and there were pictures live of the training. So they're all up on the system. Go take a look at them, but just the one in particular there, as Joe Linton and Jamal Lewis, etc., are watching on with, I think, Tyndall in the background. So we'd heard little snippets of what Eddie Howe had said, but did he seem really happy with the signing of Will Asula coming in? And what do you in particular make of that particular signing?
Yeah, he did seem quite happy, if not a little bit. He didn't say the words about time, but I think he's been pushing for transfers for quite a while. We had what he said in Germany about the dynamics and the boundaries. Well, I think the fact that he actually said in the press conference, this is a player that Jason Tyndall has been looking at for the last 3 years. I think that gives you a real clue that he's kind of got what he wants in terms of not so much a final say, but quite a big impact on the players coming in. Now, whether there's a bit of negotiation going on with Eddie and Paul Mitchell. Paul Mitchell might have turned around and said, "Look, you can have one of your picks, but I'd like you to take this guy on board as well." So that could be something we see in coming weeks. I have probably been asking more questions about the dynamics than most journalists because I'm really interested in it, and I think a lot of fans are as well. And I always say I speak for the fans in a lot of ways. And my view was that I think we needed to get that situation sort of, in the open. And basically he said that, it's not about a final say of one single person. It's about a collaboration. And I think what he was saying when he said that was basically, okay, it might not be my final say, but it's also not going to be, say, Paul Mitchell's final say either. It's got to be a conversation. So this seems like a good start. Could be a bit of a, not so much a compromise, but as I say, this could be one of Eddie Howe's picks. I mean, the other guy, we know who they're talking about, Mark Gay. He could be one that they all agree on. I think everyone sitting here and all the fans think, wow, what a signing that would be. Would be an absolute blockbuster. So ones that, signings like that are always going to be easy to say that's going to be a good signing, go and get him if you can. But there might be one further down the line that, Paul Mitchell knows about in terms of someone in France, someone he knows from his Monaco days, could bring somebody in, and that could be an interesting one as well. So it seems to be going along well now.
Yeah, definitely. Daz, I'll come to you with the Willa Asula signing. Interesting that one of the things that was established is that he will be going into the first team. So it looks like he is here to stay. What do you, or do you expect, in your opinion, that he gets many minutes, or how do you see him being used over the course of this season?
Yeah, okay. So have you met Callum Wilson? He'll be getting minutes. We want Callum Wilson to come back, and as we have always said, Callum Wilson is an asset once he's fit, and a good asset is that, and he can share the load of Isak, because Isak can go through the whole season by himself. So I think with bringing in Sula, we're assuming he's already out, but he'll be out again, Wilson. So, and when he gets up to speed, he will get some minutes. He'll see out the end of games. He might get 45 minutes in the cup competition or whatever. But he's this season is about learning from him as well. Eddie Howe has indicated that even though JT has been keeping an eye on him for the last 3 years, that he's a lot of progression to make as well. So there's plenty of room for development. He alludes to that himself in the interview he gave to Newcastle TV today. Looking forward to see what he can do when he does get his chance. Great age and great height as well, as they were made sure they pointed out 6'3", 6'4". It was debatable, but looking forward to see what he can do. So it also gets rid of all that talk of Dermot Calvert-Lewin that I detested. So happy on that front as well.
No Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Daz is happy. Maybe Chris is not so happy. I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. But look, Willa Asula is in the house. He's finally signed. Chris, you talked about we need those cash money signings in the door. Is this the start of something that could be big now over the next 3 weeks? Like, what you make of the signing now? He's officially in the door, and Eddie Howe's comments on the back of it, what Lee said. But do you see this now as a springboard for the next 3 weeks to see us out the summer transfer window?
I'm hoping so. Me personally, I understand why there was a bit of a furore from the fans. I think everyone was expecting, like this big marquee signing, and then we signed Willa Asula. Yes, you look at his stats, and yes, they don't look superb, but Eddie Howe alluded to it in, with what he said about Willa Asula when he signed, and I thought it was really interesting because it was pretty much what we'd said on this show, wasn't it? The fact he's got the physical attributes, there's a lot of potential there. He's not the finished article, but when you've got strikers like Alexander Isak and Callum Wilson, in the team, it will be very difficult to attract a third choice striker, who hasn't got room to progress, who, isn't expecting to start week in, week out, because Willa Asula isn't going to be a regular starter, but he's going to be playing week in, week out, training with these lads, and it's only going to build him up. And I think being coached by Eddie Howe, it's only going to improve him. And for me, I think it's a really clever signing. We've been screaming out, haven't we, for a third choice striker now for a while. We never really replaced Chris Wood, and he was our third choice, striker option, and he came in and he did a job when it was needed. I do understand why we let him go, because it was a fantastic, cash bid from Nottingham Forest. It makes perfect sense, but I still feel that we should have replaced. And bringing in someone like Willa Asula for me is perfect, because it gives us that extra option. Yes, we want to keep Alexander Isak fit all season, and yes, we want to keep Callum Wilson fit all season. Will that happen? Probably not. If we look at the previous seasons, I think it's safe to say that there's a possibility that one or both could be out. But now we've got that third choice option in there, and a player who is only going to build and only going to become better. I think it's really good. I think it's a clever signing. I think it's an astute signing. I do hope it's one of many. I think I said, didn't I, boys, a couple of weeks ago? For me, I think we signed 2 or 3 players. I'm probably going to include Will Asula in that. So that would mean that I'm expecting, hopefully, a right centre-back, which I know we'll probably move on to, and hopefully a right winger. And for me, if we were to bring in Will Asula plus the lads before that, and a right wing and a right centre-back, I think it's been a really good window. Not to mention we've got the likes of Sandro Tonali coming back, who will feel like a new signing. And obviously we had some big players missing at the back end of last season, such as Nick Pope, such as Joe Linton. So having those back as well will be, really, really big boost. And then Sven Botman to come, hopefully sooner rather than later. So I'm feeling positive, and I think this is the start of maybe another, at least one, hopefully 2 new signings.
Definitely. For me, with Will Asula, I see him as the sort of the unknown package. You always need somebody different that's going to come off the bench and provide something different that defenders aren't aware of. You see it throughout the years with various different teams that they bring on the unknown, and they produce a little bit of magic. And you just get a sense of what you've seen of him, whether it's little clips here and there, because no Newcastle fan really had a pocket of information about him until the news broke and everyone's watched the same clips and heard the same things about him. But he just seems to have that little bit of something that he can create, particularly late on in the game. Eddie Howe talked about it. Explosive pace. He's 6'3", 6'4". He's big physical lad that can put himself about and has the technical ability, certainly in front of goal, to make that difference. And it just sparks me of that unknown entity that could potentially not necessarily score a shed load of goals, 10, 15 goals, but could come on and score a goal or create something out of nothing that potentially wins us a game. And if he comes on and does that, and is able to create those moments, then that is exactly what Newcastle United wanted. Because for all of Chris Wood, what he did, and he served a purpose for an important part at his time at Newcastle United. What I would say is that he never really did that for us. He never really came on and made that difference. He came in when people were injured and did a job, but he never really had that spark or created that moment that made the difference. And I could be wrong. I just have that feeling around Will Asula. So he's in the house. I imagine we'll get a look at him this weekend at the Cellar Weekender. He did mention it is this weekend, so that'll be a great opportunity to take a look at him. But that's not the only thing. Oh, yeah, go for it.
Sorry, mate. I was just going to add as well. One thing that was clear as day last season was the fact that we had so many players. Well, we were running on a threadbare squad, weren't we? We wanted to be able to protect Alexander Isak. We wanted to be able to protect Callum Wilson, and at times we weren't able to do that, and there was only one of them fit at once. Having this extra option, if a game's 2 or 3-0 up, or 3-1 up, or whatever, and you go, do you know what? Let's take Alexander Isak off for these last 20 minutes. Give Will Asula the run out. It's only going to save the likes of Alexander Isak or whoever he chooses to bring off. Having a deeper, thicker squad will just mean less chances of picking up injuries. We saw how the players, at times you could see how tired they were. You could just see. So the fact that we're going to have more options this season is only going to be a benefit to us as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely. All about options. Yes, we're playing lesser games, but we're still having good quality options in the squad. As I said, it's not the only thing that was discussed in the presser, and it almost sounded, Lee, and you'll be able to kind of give us a bit more of a flavour on this because you were there and you heard him speak. Obviously, you mentioned Bruno Guimaraes was the player that was put up for you guys in the press room. And one of the things that came out off the back of it, you've mentioned it, a friend of the channel, Jordan Cronin, also mentioned it as well, that he's been named as part of the leadership group, and he joins the likes of Lascelles and Trippier, captain, vice captain, Dan Burn and Callum Wilson the same. But he almost kind of talked about, and I sort of saw this personally, as he was staying next season. And you touched on it with a few words in which you put out on a tweet earlier, and he mentions it there, saying that he thinks he's very happy that the gaffer's given him the responsibility. He wants to be a leader and help out the club in many ways, and wants to help Eddie Howe. And you make reference to the fact that he gestures to Eddie Howe because he's helped develop his game. He goes on to say he wants to help win Newcastle United a trophy, and that almost made me think that, you know, he's planning to stay next season and maybe even beyond. But what was the feeling sort of in the room when he was talking about these things, and what did you kind of gather from what Bruno Guimaraes was suggesting there?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, if this was a player that had any intention of, you know, seeing what's out there in the remainder of the window, he wouldn't sit on the stage next to Eddie Howe anyway. So it seems to me that he's focused here. They've gave him the leadership role as part of the group, which is positive. And just his whole kind of vibe and his body language was positive. And he was really focused on all the questions as well. And good to talk to him again. I've spoke to him on a number of occasions. He's a really larger than life character. I think he really just lives life to the full. I mean, you see his performances on the pitch. He's just everywhere, isn't he? I mean, we thought we were signing this defensive midfielder when he came in, and then I think it was on his full debut at Southampton. He's scoring like back heel volleys, and we've seen some unbelievable passes from him as well. A couple on pre-season, that kind of, I wouldn't call it an alehouse ball, but it's kind of that really delicate pass over the top, which splits the defense. So we see a real expression of him. But going back to the press conference, you might have seen it on social media now as well. When Eddie Howe's talking about Mark Gahey, there's a sort of little smile from Bruno Guimaraes. So fascinating to watch, but feels like he wants to be here. But I think really, and we've seen this in the past when players have left, when someone like Bruno Guimaraes is here, he's the huge kind of star. And then we've seen players of his sort of caliber, maybe Yohan Cabaye, Moussa Sissoko, they've moved on, and then they're kind of just another player in the dressing room. Whereas here, he's going to get that adulation, and I do think he kind of draws that energy in as well. The fans singing his name. I don't think he'll get that in many other places. Maybe I might be wrong. I don't know, but I think here is the right place for him, and all he's asking for now is the ambition and to win some trophies for Newcastle United, which is what we all want. And if he can be the guy who leads us to that, then yeah, we'll be in a better place for it. But fascinating guy, fascinating to watch him do. I'm really pleased he's shown his commitment as well, because, you know, we've seen a lot of rumours of Arsenal, Man City, PSG, but I think this is the right place for him. But there was a little line in there about the ambition as well, saying that, you know, he wants more. It's now up to the club. It's now up to everyone around him to try and help him, give him more. But he can certainly lead the way.
Definitely. That's Chris. Surely Bruno stays. We've been saying it was all summer. This is it now. Surely Bruno stays.
Pete, that's not news. I've been telling you that.
Oh,
Also.
yeah,
He's going nowhere.
I was doing this.
Yeah, and he's going nowhere. Yeah, so absolutely delighted to actually have Bruno on the back of this jersey. But absolutely delighted. Bruno is now part of the leadership group. There's people calling him as well that he should be made captain. I bring that on. Bring on that day that Bruno is captain as well. But yeah, he wants to win something with us, and maybe he does that. Maybe he does it as captain. Maybe there's a statue of Bruno in the future. Who knows? Not in the know on that one. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Yeah, absolutely delighted that he is with us. But if things don't go well this season, and we don't get top 5, top 4 that get into that Champions League, there'll be big question marks, I think, on Bruno and a few more. So it is a very important season, and for Eddie as well, that we deliver this season. Not too many injuries as things stand, not too many transfers, big money transfers happened yet. So a lot to happen in the last couple of weeks of the transfer window.
Chris, are you now a solid he stays, or are you still worried? You know, I think there was a worry the other day, yesterday, in fact, when the Julio Alvarez deal was agreed with Atletico Madrid, and there's lots of fans on social saying, "Oh, well, they've now got that 100 million. Who are they going to go for?" Hinting at Bruno. Are you still in that camp, or is Bruno's comments kind of ended that question mark for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I said a couple of months back, didn't I? When the clause was still active, that the three clubs I was worried about were PSG, Real Madrid, and Man City. They were the three that I felt, you know, would have a decent shot at getting him. Obviously, PSG, he's been there, seen it, done it in France, so there was always a question mark whether he'd go back. Real Madrid, I think it would be difficult for anybody to reject Real Madrid, but obviously the thing going in our favour is the fact that they had like 71 central midfielders, and then they signed Luka Modric to a new contract. I know Toni Kroos retired, but I still felt confident that like Real Madrid wouldn't necessarily go in for them. And then, yeah, Man City was a threat. I think the fact that Man City, you know, have those charges hanging over their head, there was a little bit of doubt over Pep. I know Pep came out and said that, you know, he kind of clarified his words and said that he doesn't necessarily, he might extend his contract, but what he was referring to when he previously said that he was nearer to leaving than he was when he first joined, I think he got mistranslated in that. And maybe he's been a bit coy as well. Maybe he's after another pay rise and another contract extension, who knows. But I think now that the clause has gone, I think now that, you know, the new season is so very near, you know, we're talking like 9 days away. I can't see him going now. And I think for Newcastle to even contemplate accepting an offer, it would have to be an astronomical offer. Because if we were to lose Bruno in, say, the last week or the last couple of weeks of the transfer window, it would be catastrophic. And we would need a plan B ready to rock and roll. And I think maybe there was a plan B, but now I think we're quite settled, and we know that the onus is very much with us now. If we want to sell Bruno, you know, it's our choice. That clause is gone, so it's not really, it's very much in our hands, is what I'm trying to say. And for me, I think Bruno stays for this season, and I agree with what Daz has said in that, you know, maybe this season is kind of I'll give you one more season and let's see where we stand at the end of the season. If we've got Champions League qualification, I'll probably feel confident that we keep him. If we don't, I'll be honest, I think I'll be a bit nervous then. And I think if another club comes calling, he may well listen.
I'm not thinking about next season just yet. Bruno Guimaraes for as long as we possibly can. But for me, I think that absolutely decimates our summer. If you're going to lose Bruno Guimaraes, you lose him almost during the period where his release clause was active. And the reason being is because, and look, the owners of the club are not stupid. They're very, very smart businessmen and women. And this is why they put that in place, because ultimately you've then got the rest of the summer to replace him. Are we really going to be able to replace Bruno Guimaraes with 3 weeks to go, even with all that money? Who's out there that you can go and slap that sort of money down and get a replacement? You know, there's just no one really like him out there. If you're going to lose Bruno Guimaraes, you've got almost a succession plan that you've got to have in place before the summer even kicks in, because it's going to take you the summer to replace someone of his ability. It's that simple, or even get close to it. So for me, he stays. The comments were positive. Lee's calmed my fears even more so because of his the way in which he spoke and how positive he was, from what Lee's talked about in the press conference. So Newcastle United fans, everyone that's watching, we've got nearly 300 plus watching live right now. We can be calm for now. He's a Newcastle United player. However, one player that's not a Newcastle United player yet, potentially, is another defender. That we've talked about other defenders previously this summer, but Mark Gay is still on the lips of all Newcastle United fans. There was or wasn't an update Lee, you might be able to tell us a little bit more with regards to this. I know you reported on it. It was very, very short and sweet in the tweet that you put out earlier. A friend of the channel as well, Miles Starforth, put something similar within that, but also admitted that Eddie Howe said he was light on numbers in that position. Look, we're in a bit of a sort of maybe like a difficult situation at the moment, because we heard the news break on Friday, nearly a week ago. Newcastle fans were excited at the thought of that big, and we refer to it as a statement signing, if we could get something like that done. There's been lots of rumours and murmurs about deals, bids being agreed. Where do you see this Mark Gay deal at this moment in time? Is it still in play? Do you see it do you see it happening, and if so, when?
Yeah, I mean, today Eddie's comments were, for me, probably telling. That when he said he can't give you anything, was basically him. He wasn't saying that this is going to happen very soon, but there's been times where certainly I've put names to him, other people have put names to him, and he's basically shot them down and said it's not happening, or that's not true, or it's inaccurate. He didn't say that today. He said that I can't give you anything on it. But I actually, because I've actually reported on this and I've checked it out with the right people, I know that those talks, the contact was made, and I know the talks were ongoing. Now, that was on, what night was that? Thursday or Friday night, when the story initially broke. And then obviously I've checked it with people who will know, and they're very reliable, and told me that it was active. And yes, he's gone back to Crystal Palace, but there's probably a bit of transfer brinkmanship going on here. Crystal Palace want the best price they can get. I think they did that with Michael Olise as well, with Bayern Munich. So, and there's still 22 days or something left of the window. So they're not just going to take the first offer. We do know there's been, I don't know if you can call it an offer, but there's certainly been a suggestion on the price, and that wasn't, they didn't kind of bite on that. So I think Newcastle are going to have to slowly go back in with more. We were told that Newcastle were the only team at the table at the moment, but we know that there's other clubs interested. Liverpool, notably, historically have been interested. So it's one that Newcastle they'll be keen to do it. It would represent their marquee signing of the summer. Be one of the best signings, defensively for, I don't know how far do you go back. Jonathan Woodgate, it's kind of up there with that ilk of defender. Kieran Trippier as well, obviously he's a right back. But in terms of where this signing would stand, I mean, it would be a club record for a start, but also it would be, we've all just watched the European Championships, and I think probably everyone here, if you had to write down on a bit of paper your top 2 or 3 performers, I think he would probably be on there, given how great he was in the Euros. So it would be a huge sign, and it would give Newcastle a real crack at getting back in that top 4 or 5 clubs. And it would also send a message out to other players that, wow, Newcastle are making some big business here. It would give Newcastle starting 11, if you looked at it on paper with Gahey in it, it would give them a real steely look. So let's hope it's, we can kick on with it, push on with it, patience. We had that with Sven Botman a couple of years ago, didn't we? That they didn't get him the first time, but eventually they got him. I hope Newcastle can get Gahey in this window, but hopefully just patience, and the price has got to be right as well. Newcastle have got the PSR thing going on. There's probably going to be a couple of departures as well, not just the obvious ones. There might be someone else who's just not going to play this season, leaves, and Newcastle get the money for him. So yeah, let's just hope it happens. But from what we've heard today, it didn't sound like anything had gone wrong, and I know that they're quietly pushing away in the background to try and get it done.
All very interesting, boys. Obviously, we were hoping that something would be breaking sort of yesterday, today. It's not quite happened yet, but from the points that Lee's made, Daz, you're still confident that this deal's going to get done. And the reason why I say that is because I've seen on social media there's lots of fans that are adamant and this deal isn't going to happen, that something's going to happen that's going to crash this deal, whether Liverpool decide they want to go in. I heard one fan say that they're going to wait to get Zubamendi in and then they're going to go for Mark Gay and it's going to all fall apart. Are you there, or are you still convinced, yeah, we're at the table, we're going to get this deal done?
This is definitely getting done. Definitely. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the fact that they're trying and they're pushing, then for me, I think that's the most positive sign you could have from a transfer. So hopefully that helps your confidence.
Yeah, no, it does. Look, if the first bid was accepted, then we know they paid too much for him. It's always going to be a bit of haggling going on and backing over the structure of the deal. I hope it doesn't go on for too much longer, though. I hope that it happens now while I'm gone for the next week, because we need to move on and we need to start talking about offloading. So some of the others, as Lee has indicated, we've probably talked about trips and Miggy and maybe a few more. Ryan Fraser, obviously, as well. A few more that we have to offload, but we need to get concentrated then on a right winger. The season will have started. Murphy will be our first choice right winger, I think, going into the start of the season, but we need someone else. And that was the position that we identified as being. Lee mentioned on paper, we have with Mark Gahey in, we have a great squad apart from right wing. That's the area that needs the tweak, and then we're all set up, ready to go.
Yeah, from what Lee's just mentioned as well as yourself, that it does seem, because they are pushing, Chris, that it looks like they are intent on getting this deal done. A couple of things that we've been bouncing about in our chat that's kind of come out and popped out just to add to this as well, adds fuel to the positivity, is that Dom Smith of the Evening Standard has reported that, who reports on Crystal Palace, has reported that, they're already looking at their alternatives. Two of their alternatives are there. Maxence Lacroix, previously linked with Newcastle United, and Trevor Chalobah, the same, previously linked by Chris Hall, of all people, to Newcastle. Yeah, we've heard of him. So it does look like it's going in the right direction. They're looking at an alternative. It's normally what clubs do when they're preparing to let go of a player.
Yeah, no, I agree, Pete. Yeah, because some clubs, I know, like people will say, in an ideal world, you sell a player and then you go and buy a new player. But, some clubs are kind of savvy to that, in the sense that if we go and buy Mark Gay for 60, 65, 70 million, then when Crystal Palace go to the negotiation table with Chelsea, for example, Chelsea go, oh, you've just got 70 million for Mark Gay, or the price for Chalobah is now 30 million, 35 million. They'll chance their arm a little bit. Whereas if they have those discussions now, and they're going, oh, what's going on with Mark Gay? I'm like, I don't know, I'm not sure. Don't know, might go through, might not. It's a distraction that they don't need. So quite often deals get agreed for incoming players before they let someone go. So that's nothing unusual. So yeah, I think that could be, who knows, that could be delaying things. For all we know, a price could well be agreed, and we're just waiting for Crystal Palace to take action. This is the thing. I know, it's dragging on a little bit, if you like, because as Lee said, the news broke nearly a week ago, or just over a week ago. So you could argue that fans are getting frustrated and we want to see that big marquee signing, but these things take time, and there's nothing to say that maybe we're waiting for things happening at the Palace end. I mean, I'm not saying that is the case, but just another theory. Why not? I'm actually, and I know normally I'm the one to kind of shoot these things down, where there's too much noise. I get very skeptical then, and I'm always like, oh, is it a smokescreen, or is this a distraction, or is it going to happen? But I feel like this has gone too far now. Like I do firmly believe, especially with respect to journalists like Lee, saying that there is definitely talks underway, or talks have taken place. You can't ignore those things. So I'm hoping that it's just a matter of time before this deal gets sealed. And like I say, when it does, as Daz says, let's move on to the next one. Let's go and get that right winger.
Definitely. As Lee, you mentioned it as well, is that the fact that they don't shoot it down gives you the confidence that they're actually at the table, because the Newcastle United have always been very, very good at that. If they're not interested in the player or it isn't happening, they'll just tell you that, and they'll just say, "No, not interested in you." And we get a flavour of that as fans because we see the links on social media, and then very quickly either one of yourselves or one of the other Northeast journalists will shoot it down and say, "Heard from the club, sources, not interested," and then that's the end of it. The fact that this hasn't happened and it's still a week in, and it hasn't yet been shut down, or another club hasn't come in, or we're moving on to another target, is what's been suggested. It does give you that feel. But I've got a question for all three of you. We were talking about it. You asked the question, Lee. You said, "Oh, how big is signing is this? Is it as big a signing as Jonathan Woodgate way back when under Sir Bob Robson? I think that was 2004. I think it was when he brought Woodgate to the table." I want to ask you a question. If Mark Gay signs, is this bigger than when we signed Sven Botman 2 years ago? In your opinion, if the deal gets done, I'm asking all three of you here as a panel. Is this bigger than Sven Botman if we sign Mark Gay? Forget transfer fee for a second. Put that aside. Is it bigger than Sven Botman?
For me, no, because we chased Sven Botman for a year or so before that, or at least 6 months, and he was like taking him from under the noses of Milan. A statement signing, one for the future, one we're going to base a Rolls Royce defender, all these different things we could say, and he's lived up to it as well. He got injured and played through the season with the injury for a long time as well. But no, I think that was the statement as we took off, let's say. This is different, Mark Gay, because it's a Premier League proven, one of the best players for England at the Euros and in the tournament itself. So it is different. It's at a higher level in that sense. But I think for me, Botman would have been bigger because it was a stepping stone towards where we're going to. This is adding on top of that. So that's my opinion.
Well, we'll build suspense with Lee. We'll come to you last. So we'll go to Chris next. What are you thinking, Chris? You agree with Daz? You've got a slightly different slant on it. What are you thinking?
I'm like stuck in the middle because I will go on one side, by the way, but Daz nearly convinced me there.
Or so get Keith, otherwise if you don't.
I'm not doing a Keith. No, do you know what? Because when you first asked, it was a great question, by the way, Pete. When you first asked, I was like, yeah, bigger. And then when I listened to Daz, I was like, oh, he's made some good points, but I'm going to stick with my initial thought. I do think it's bigger. And the only reason being is because, like, Sven Botman was an absolutely fantastic signing. Daz was right, beating AC Milan to him, top prospect. But I think with Mark Gay, particularly off the back of that Euros, Mark Gay came in, everyone was kind of looking at him going, hang on a minute, everyone's been slagging off Harry Maguire, and then we brought Mark Gay. Mark Gay was the replacement. I think people expected it to be Jared Branthwaite. People thought that maybe Joe Gomez would step in, and then he just went with Mark Gay. And then when Mark Gay came in, he surprised a lot of people. And I think for us to sign a player who, off the back, as we've already said, arguably was one of the best, if not the best, England player, and a centre-back who's also been playing incredibly well for Crystal Palace, for us to go and sign him, I think it kind of speaks volumes. It speaks volumes. We're breaking our transfer record. We're signing a player from, who's really, really sought after. I know Lee mentioned that, like Liverpool have been linked with him previously, but I think if you asked, the majority of the other big clubs, would you like Mark Gay? They would probably say yes. There'll be reasons why they won't come in and spend the money or go for it, because they've maybe got players in place and they don't necessarily need them right now. But I think quality-wise, they would be envious of us signing Mark Gay. And I think it feels like that statement signing where, we saw last season, there was no problem with scoring goals. We scored plenty of goals last season, but defensively, we weren't great. So, what better way than to go and plug that gap and bring in arguably one of the best performing centre-backs last season, not just in the Premier League, but also on the European stage in the European final. Do you know what I mean? It feels really, really big to me. And when Lee was talking about, the biggest signing since Jonathan Woodgate, that's why I was nodding, because I had Jonathan Woodgate in my head. I remember when we signed Jonathan Woodgate, and I was like, wow, like I was so happy when we got Jonathan Woodgate, blew my mind. And then when he played, it was just like, wow, this guy is unbelievable. I remember being in Newquay on holiday with my mates when he went to Real Madrid, and I couldn't believe it. I literally couldn't believe it. It took me like a week to get over it, because he was one of the best centre-backs I've seen play for Newcastle. He was just unbelievable. So I think if we were to sign Mark Gahey, for me, it would get me really excited about the season to come, because it does feel like, and we've seen it before, boys, when we bring the squad up, we're only a few jigsaw pieces away from having a team where you go, that's top four material. If we bring in one or two players, and I think like Mark Gahey could be that real solid piece of the jigsaw, or maybe one of the final pieces of the jigsaw. So I'm going to say yes, bigger than Sven Botman signing. Just.
Lee, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I agree. It's really close. It's a really close split decision almost, but I'm going to say it is bigger than Botman. Just similar to what you just said there about. Let's look at it to try and say something a little bit different to what you said. Let's look at that England squad in the summer and the realistic signings that Newcastle could get from that England squad. I mean, you're not going to get, we're playing fantasy football. You're not going to get a Phil Foden or a Cole Palmer, because they are at the clubs that they're on. You know what I mean? But from the achievable transfers, from the ones that did very well at that Euros, Mark Gahey's got to be top of that list. He's got to be. So on that basis, if you're signing one of the stars of the summer, not just stars of England, stars of the whole tournament, that for me makes it bigger. And just one other quick thing to throw in there: if you look at the last four clubs that Mark Gahey's been linked with, Liverpool, Manchester United, Arsenal, and Tottenham, and I know that all those clubs have watched Mark Gahey as well, and I know Botman was linked with big clubs as well. This isn't me putting Botman down at all, because he's a class act as well. But I think Premier League wise, that is a statement signing if you can get Mark Gahey in. So for me, yes, it's close, but I'm going to say yes as well.
And the point that you've just made, Lee, is why it's so imperative that we get this deal done, because of the teams that have been linked with Mark Gahey. And it's very much a tight window to get a quality player in. It's a little bit like Bruno Guimaraes during that January window. Like if we'd have waited till the summer, he'd have gone elsewhere, because others would have had the money to be able to put that down. We exploited the situation for a player that we'd scouted and was able to put the money down and go, yep, we'll take him now. Other teams are probably looking at him and going, oh yeah, quality player, would love him right now, but we need to prioritize other areas. And because they're stuck signing, they need a striker. Tottenham need a striker and a winger. Liverpool need other areas filling, centre midfield at the moment, that they're prioritized their money elsewhere. This is the time, and that's what fills me with confidence, because there's a time to strike, and the time to strike is now. Because I genuinely believe if we leave this, if we don't get it done in the summer, we might as well forget Mark Gahey, because he will go elsewhere. He will continue to play exceptionally well for Crystal Palace, and will get his move elsewhere. It's just that simple. So, interesting thoughts on the back of that. I know we took a little bit longer to answer that question, but it's definitely worth a conversation on that. I want to just run through one more topic just before we come to some questions, because I'm just wary of time for Lee as we sort of approach the hour mark. But we talked about players leaving. It didn't quite seem from the written comments that Eddie Howe had completely ruled out Kieran Trippier leaving. But what do you make? I'm going to kind of bunch these particular players together, just want to get your thoughts on this, Lee. So obviously, with the situation with Trippier in particular, it was linked last night that he from McGrath from the Telegraph saying that West Ham was interested in Trippier. Obviously that question was asked today. Yourself reported on it, and you reported that there are crunch talks with Newcastle United and Trippier after the West Ham inquiry. Where are we at with players leaving? We've got the likes of Callum Wilson as well. We don't know the situation that we're assuming that he's going to stay now that Will Osuna is in the team. Miguel Almiron, another player that we've talked about, is those three players that are likely to leave this summer. We've got fringe players. We mentioned it, the likes of Ryan Fraser, Jamal Lewis, Target, and various others. But those three first team players, should we say, where do you see their futures lying after this summer transfer window? Do you see any of them leaving? And if so, who?
For me, I mean, Kieran Trippier is, and I've said this on the Everything is Black and White podcast a couple of times now. And basically, if he isn't going to get the contract offer, I mean, he's got 1 year left on his deal. And if Newcastle aren't going to offer him another deal, and let's say West Ham, just for example, they say, well, we can put a 2-year contract on the table, then the chances are he's going to go because he's going to be looking for that security. Same with Callum Wilson as well. If someone comes in and offers him an extra year or potentially longer, you never know, then they're going to go and take that long contract, because this is a key time in their careers where they're going to want to have that security for family reasons, for their own career. So that leaves the door open for them in these last 22 days of the window. And I think that's going to be something we need to keep an eye on, really. And if it happens quickly, let's say Trippier does go, I don't know, let's say he goes in the next week or so, then I think suddenly Newcastle will look to try and reinvest that money, look to fill that squad space the best they can. They could probably get through the season. Well, they could definitely, if Livramento was fit every game, they'll fly through the season. But you've got Emil Kraft, who can play there as well. And really, for Newcastle, it's about options now. And, they might look to do something creative with that money if Trippier went. So I do think there'll be departures in the next fortnight. I've got no doubt about it. And I think, there could be one who's a bigger name, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Boys, who do we think is going? Because it wasn't only a number of weeks ago that we were like, yeah, Trippier's gone, Wilson's gone, Miggy's gone. They're all gone. They're all leaving the club. Yet we're just over sort of a week away from the start of the season. They're all still here. They're all training with the club. No direct firm links with a move away. How do you see this going, boys? I asked the question to Lee. Who do you think is going to leave now at the end of the season?
I think Trips is gone. He will be going. It's not as easy as we thought, or might have alluded to though as well. Miggy, it's going to be a struggle. We're going to kind of maybe have to take a bit of a hit to move him somewhere he wants to go. But I think he'll have to go first to bring in that right winger as well. Ryan Fraser is a given. We have to come up with some kind of a way to offload him. And after that, maybe that's it. Yeah, I think like Sean Longstaff is going to be there as a squad player, good squad player to have as well. And he's like last season he had injuries and was kind of playing through them, so good squad player to have. But yeah, I think that could be it.
Chris, I'm going to focus purely on one player for you for this, Miguel Almiron. Do you think he is going to leave? It's rumoured that he's had interest from Saudi and various other clubs. He's still here. He's been playing preseason friendlies. There's no direct solid links at this moment in time. From what we see as fans, is he leaving?
My gut now is saying that he probably won't. I suppose the only thing that could help to maybe offload him is if we were to bring in that right winger, and then Eddie Howe was having a conversation with him and saying, "Listen, mate, you're third choice now, and you know the ball's in your court," kind of thing. The longer that Miggy stays and the longer that we're not solidly linked with a right winger, the more I am concerned that we're going to just go with Miggy and Murphy for the new season. And for me, I think that'd be a big mistake. Not saying I want us to just go out and sign any right winger and anyone will do. I like the fact that, we want to bring in the right players, and we've already heard, management saying, we can't make mistakes in the transfer window. So if the player or players that we want aren't available, I would understand that approach. But I just hope it's not because we can't get rid of Miggy and that's why we're not bringing in the right winger. If you were putting a gun to me head now, I think Callum Wilson's definitely going to stay. Will Asula proves that for me, that he's definitely going to stay. Miggy Almiron, if you're asking me as of today, I'm going to say he will probably stay. The one that I think is most likely to go is Kieran Trippier. I would have sold him in January, as you boys know. I really was off. I think it was a decent offer from Bayern. Hopefully we can get a similar offer. And I know, Pete, you mentioned you put it in our group chat, didn't you, about the links with West Ham? And I know ideally you wouldn't want to sell to a Premier League rival, but if you're getting 10 million for the 33-year-old, soon to be 34, it just financially it just makes sense. I don't want to play against Kieran Trippier, but at the same time, if that frees up 30-40 million for us to go and buy someone else, do it, because we've got Tino Livramento, and Tino Livramento, he's ready to be number one right back now. And I kind of, like we've discussed previously, I kind of don't want Tino having that hanging over him. Like if the season started tomorrow, if the first game was tomorrow, I'd genuinely be thinking now, is Trippier going to start or is Tino going to start? And I kind of don't want that anymore for him. I want Tino to be the first choice right back, and I think he should be. But who knows? But yeah, I'd say as of now, Pete, I think Miggy's going to stay. I think.
I see it. I'm slightly different with Trippier. Is that I think he'll go, but I'd actually want him to stay. I just think we need strength in depth in all areas. And I think Eddie Howe feels exactly the same. It's just my opinion. I think Eddie Howe feels the same, but I think the fact that he's on some of the biggest wages in the club, to move him on and potentially get a fee for him at nearly 34 years old, it's a no-brainer. You'd have to do it. My only issue is I do not want him going to another Premier League team, especially West Ham, who are going to be fighting in the same ballpark as us next season. You don't want to be strengthening your rivals in any way, shape, or form. Other rivals haven't wanted to strengthen us in the previous 2.5, 3 seasons. So why should we be doing the same? That's my only thing. If he's going to leave, go to Spain, go to Saudi, wherever, fine, no problem. But not stay in England at a team. If you go to like a Palace or another team that's maybe fighting lower in the Premier League table, fine. But not those teams that are fighting in the same ballpark as us. That's just my only thing on that. With Miguel Almiron, he has to go. He has to go, in my opinion. Like, he has to. Like, and it's a really difficult situation because we respect what he's done for the club, but he has to leave. It's so crucial. Chris, you touched on it. That right wing position is absolutely crucial to be filled this summer. And so my question to you, Lee, really quickly before we hopefully we've got some time with you to ask a few questions. My question to you, Lee, is could we see a situation where Miggy maybe doesn't want to leave, but we still sign a right winger anyway? And so, as both Daz and Chris alluded to, Miggy almost becomes a third choice because of his maybe refusal to leave the club. Is there a situation or a scenario where you see that potentially happening?
I think it's a possibility, and I think if he did stay, then I think Eddie Howe would keep him involved, because I know Eddie Howe. Yeah, he loves Almiron he's a nice bubbly character behind the scenes. I've had the privilege to interview him and sit down with him, and he was just such a nice guy. He's a family guy. You know, he loves being a Newcastle player. That's the one thing you've got to remember with Miggy. He loves pulling on a black and white shirt. He loves the fans. He loves the fact the fans have got a little chant for him. You know, you've seen the video where he's got his little boy singing it, and I think him and his partner, they love the area. You know, we get to sort of say hello to them when they're leaving the ground on a Saturday night or whenever, and they just love the city. And I think he'll dig his heels in and he'll try and stay. I mean, he's got 22 days to hold out, hasn't he? So maybe he sees this as an opportunity to have, you know, one last kind of run at it at Newcastle. I know people will disagree because for some reason he's kind of he gets criticism like all players do, but when he has a bad game, I think he really feels it. You know what I mean? It's tough for him. But I think one of the comments that I seen pop up there, someone saying about that run that he had 22-23 season. I mean, you wouldn't have sold him for any price at that point because he was just red hot. And the World Cup break came at a really bad time for him because, yeah, he was still good after it, but that rich vein of form, what a shame that he wasn't able to continue that. And if he could get back to that, then that would be another great addition to have in the armory. And I mean, I remember actually asking him about, you know, what was different, why was it going so well for him? And he's such a humble guy. He just said basically, at the minute I'm hitting things and they're going in, but I'm always trying to do that anyway. So I think he's 100%. But sometimes, sadly, when he has a bad miss, it really seems to hit on social media for him.
At that time, he was going through that purple patch, that purple season. We said, no, sell him. He's never going to be. We're never going to get to see that again at the height of his potential sell-on fee and so on and so forth. But we'll get to some questions, Pete, because there's only 30 in the chat. 30 questions.
I was going to say, just very quickly, that situation there, what you just said, that's exactly the same as what Villa have done with Douglas Luiz. So Douglas Luiz had a monster season at Villa and then maximised their sale and then moved him on. That's exactly what they did. It's what we didn't do and what we could have done, but we didn't. And that's kind of where we sit there. Just
Douglas Luiz, though.
No, probably not. It was a wild decision. We've got some ex-Newcastle United players in the chat. We've got Alan St-Maximin. Welcome into Alan St-Maximin. And Christian Basidas. Is in the chat.
Yes.
We've got some
It's Marvo in earlier as well. Loads of them.
But some questions. I don't know how long we've got with you, Lee, because I know you've slightly gone over with us, and we really appreciate that. But we'll just throw some questions at you as quickly as we can. Quick fire, if you will.
Okay, quick fire. Okay, some for us. Question from Kev Tay says, question for Lee. Has any journal asked how if he has applied for the England job?
Yeah, he was asked this. Obviously, he was asked it in Germany, but he was asked again last week in Japan, and he basically said he's had no contact with the FA. You know, whether someone else might have put the feelers out to the FA on his behalf, I don't know. I'm just saying that could be a possibility, and the fact that we're now looking at probably Lee Castley getting the job as a sort of caretaker says to me that the FA have gone round the candidates and seen what their situations are and seen what their salaries might be and stuff like that, and have decided it's not the right time to go for certain candidates, of which Eddie could have been one.
I, for one, think Lee Carsey is a fantastic appointment for England, and I think they should just make it permanent now. Just make it permanent. Why not? Great appointment.
Great servant for Ireland as well. So yeah, best of both worlds. There you go. Give him the job. Craig Lee says, Lee, ask about Bowen. So he wants to ask you about Jared Bowen, I guess. Any thoughts around that one? Is that something that could happen? Also, someone had it in the chat earlier, used trips as a bargaining Chip in that potential transfer?
I think with Jarrod Bourne, obviously a signing that Newcastle. I mean, he was halfway up the motorway at one point to try and sign for Steve Bruce, and I can tell you for a fact that I think he was at Hull at the time. Hull had basically instructed an agent to get this deal done, but it didn't happen. Mike Ashley, in the end, didn't like the figures. He didn't come. This time around, well, I think the fact that we've got Willis Sula through the door, we've got Callum Wilson, Alexander Isak, says to me that they seem well stocked with strikers now. So maybe this isn't the window for it, but there's definitely interest there. And let's say Callum Wilson does maybe go in this window as a possibility, then I think he would be a player that Eddie Howe would probably like in some ways.
Okay. Cool. Let's. Sorry, Peter, do you want to get in there?
No.
Let's talk about goalkeepers. I'll mix a few questions together, right? Because Tom says, Lee, where do you think Dubravka will go this season? And also tie in with Toon Talk, he talks about James Trafford. And I know Burnley have purchased another goalkeeper from France. So do you think we'll go in for another goalkeeper? We have 5 already. Can you see Dubravka going?
I mean, there was definitely interest in Trafford, but since then, obviously, Newcastle have signed 2 goalkeepers since then, and they've got another one back, and you've got Mark Gillespie and Nick Pope as well. So hard to see them signing another goalkeeper now, but you never know if one of the other ones goes on loan. But Dubravka is probably definitely going to go, isn't he? Where he goes, I heard there was interest from Arsenal. Could he go there as a potential backup if Ramsdale went? It's one where there's been interest, but there'll be a host of clubs on the continent that would be interested in him as well. Certainly an odd situation that he's back after everything that's happened, and basically he can just turn up if he wants to and pick his money up basically, and that seems to be what he's done. But look, it's not his fault they've signed 2 goalkeepers. He's contracted to Newcastle. He had a good season last year, really, didn't he? For me, given he got thrown in the deep end, I think it took him a while to readjust to being known he was going to be number 1 for a while. But there was some, good nights for him. I mean, the Blackburn Cup night, save the penalty. So yeah, let's. I don't have anything negative to say about Dubravka because again, I know that he was committed to Newcastle. I know he went to Man United, but he was kind of pushed there. But he came back and he's never let anyone down. So, and again, he's another one of the good guys in football. So, I've got nothing negative to say about him, but I do think his time is pretty much up at Newcastle now.
Lee, did we really pay Forest 20 million for Vlachodimos?
Wow, well that's an interesting one, and I haven't actually had that stood up. But if that was true, then that means that Anderson would have went for a 15 million fee on paper, which doesn't really make sense. So I don't know if that was just a valuation. It was thrown in there, wasn't it? But it was never stood up. Whether it comes out in the future, we'll have to wait and see. But it would rub a little bit of salt into the wound for those who didn't want Elliot Anderson to be sold. Yeah,
it's still down in most circles as an Anderson £35 million transfer. So like that's kind of how it's still been written down. So it's I'm trying to put it the positive here.
That's how history will see it, please. Yeah.
20 million for a goalkeeper that only cost Forest 9 million and actually performed worse than that 9 million whilst at the club. It doesn't sound like a great deal for Newcastle United. It sounds like desperation, which as we all know that weekend they were in desperation. So hopefully you find out the information, Lee, and it's all false. But yeah,
we have come back and tell us it was 3 million, Lee.
Yeah. A great question here from Geordie Tune for Life, and I'm going to add another bit onto it. But he says, question for Lee: who has impressed you the most in an interview? It doesn't have to be a Newcastle player. And also, I want to ask who has disappointed you in an interview or has been all right. So you can name and shame.
Great question. It's a great question.
Yeah, great question.
Well, I mean, in my sort of career, I mean, I was lucky enough to interview Sir Bobby Robson 3 times. So, and one of the times was I was actually reporting on Scunthorpe United for the Scunthorpe Telegraph, and I was hoping to get 5 minutes with him. It was to talk about lower league football and stuff like that. I was hoping to get 5 minutes, and I think he gave me something close to about 77 minutes. You know, you couldn't. You had almost too much stuff. So I interviewed him 2 or 3 times. I've interviewed Gaza before, which was a brilliant experience for me. I was lucky enough to report on Alan Shearer's last season at Newcastle. So got to speak to him on a number of occasions. So there, some big impressive sort of names there. In terms of the ones that have been a letdown, well, I think, look, when you've been doing this job for a number of seasons, as any journalist will tell you, you will have the odd clash with players. So there will be players that just don't want to talk to you. They read the player ratings and perhaps think you've been a bit harsh on them. But I'm trying to think the best, probably the funniest story. I'm not going to say that someone's let me down, but what I'd say is that probably the funniest story is where Alan Smith, who played for Newcastle, former Leeds and Man United, and it was one of those days in the winter where the sun's like really blinding, and they were coming off the training pitch, and I couldn't actually see who it was because the sunlight was so bright, and all I could see was this shadow, and could hear this kind of growling, and it was Alan Smith, and he was like, "I want a word with you," and basically he was kicking off, and it was about a story on the back page of the Journal, but it wasn't me who wrote it, and he'd got the journalists mixed up, and he was like having this really bad rant at me, and I said, "Well, look, you know, as ever, the opportunist, I was trying to say, well, look, if you want to put it right, mate, you know, we can do an interview right now." But look, he was good as gold after that. He just got the journalist mixed up. And
what journalist was it? Go on.
Well, I'm sure he wouldn't mind us saying it was Stuart Rayner, who used to work for the Journal, and me and Stu have had a laugh about that a few times before. So good friend of mine who now works for the Yorkshire Post. He's the main man down there. So we've had a laugh about that one a few times. But the story was right. I think what he wrote was about having a setback or something. But it's just one of them where it's one of the many ones where it's boiled over a little bit. But usually it's good because it kind of clears the air and you move on from it. But there is 1 or 2 players who probably won't speak to you again after something like that. But he actually did speak to you again after that, so it was okay.
Fair play. Prolific goal scorer, Alan Smith. Yeah. Right, there's a good one here, and I'm going to add to it a bit as well. Shane Mawson, who's a member for 31 months. Nice one, Shane, from Australia. And of course, he put in his man from Oz as well in there. He asked, well, will the likes of Qual and the younger Miley leave out on loan? Or have you heard much of like Alex Murphy and a few more going on loan? Have you had any talk there?
Yeah, I've definitely heard Alex Murphy has a number of clubs sort of sniffing around it, but I think he's been carrying an injury, so that might have held that up. But I could see him going on loan. Kewell as well. It's a really important one that he goes on loan, but it's to the right club because he's had two sort of loans that haven't worked out for him over in Volendam in Holland and Hearts in Scotland. So this one's really important for him because he's a young player who needs time. The younger Miley, what are we talking, Lewis here?
Is Jamie older?
Jamie's older, yeah.
Jamie's the older one.
So
but the younger one's apparently coming through. Is that right?
There's another one, yeah. I think that's that's Mason is called. So, and then there's one at Sunderland as well. There's the little brother, the youngest brothers at Sunderland as well. So, that's unbelievable family. Big story on them on the website today. It's had loads of people reading it. Loads of interest in them. I think Jamie Miley could possibly go on loan because he's going to be sixth or seventh choice midfielder, but he could potentially stay around playing the Carabao Cup games. But I think you probably would benefit. If it was me advising him, I would say you're going to benefit from going to an AFL club and playing 42, 43 games, then coming back for the next pre-season and be ready. But look, we've seen players break through in a season, so perhaps this could be one for him.
Cool. Last question, Lee, and then we'll take a few quick fire ones. Then we'll put Lee out of his misery there, but so we can answer ourselves. What comes from Tom Dixon? Tom, always the man when one of our spanners with some great questions. But he says, "Where do you think Newcastle will finish this season, Lee?"
Well, this is a question that I've had a conversation with a couple of people today, and one answer that I got from someone was that they said probably finish 7th or 8th again because they've pretty much got the same squad. But for me, I'm a bit more optimistic. I do think we can finish 5th, potentially 4th. If we haven't got Europe, so we've got weeks where Eddie can really get on the training pitch with the players, work with them. We're capable of it. If everyone stays fit, we're capable of finishing in the top 4 or top 5. So I'll go 4th or 5th.
Nice. I'm of the same opinion myself. 4th or 5th. I think. Look, we're all nodding there. Yeah,
but both can get Champions League. A better turnout for the English teams in Europe, which I do expect to see this season, will ensure that 5th place gets you Champions League. So either will have you at the table. Absolutely. But right, Lee, we'll put you out your misery. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know we've gone over, and we as a channel really appreciate that, Lee. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully, it's not the last time we have you on Loaded Mag NUFC. But just before you go, and I know Daz has put it in the thumbnail and in the tag for the show. Yeah. Just tell everybody where they can find your work.
Yeah, well, obviously the main base for me is Chronicle Live. That's where you'll find all my sort of written work. But obviously the other big one, Everything is Black and White podcast, which we do several of them a week, not just me. Obviously, we've got Andrew Musgrove and Aaron Stokes on there. We've got Gibbo on there. So we do a lot of podcasts. So there's plenty to choose from your favorite journalists. And the main one of them that I'm involved in is usually the directly after the game. So basically, once we've done the match report, the player ratings, we spoke to the manager, we put one out, and basically I'll talk, just give my gut reaction on things, basically how I feel. It's usually how I feel with my sort of supporter heart, and that's the big one. We've got the Black and White, Everything is Black and White podcast channel on YouTube, which would be great if everyone can subscribe to that. And then obviously we've got my YouTube channel as well, which has been running a while. We're not as big as you guys, but we're there to offer people an alternative. So yeah, there's plenty of places, and obviously the usual Twitter and Facebook pages. So there's so much to pick from.
Well, we're all about supporting other channels. This is what we're about as a channel. So for everyone that's watching, we've had 400 plus watching tonight. And we'll have loads of watch backs on the back of this as well. So for everybody, go and subscribe to the Everything's Black and White podcast. Brilliant podcast, brilliant hosts on that channel in particular, but as well as that Lee Ryder's channel. I know we're subscribed to that as well. Go and subscribe to that channel as well and show your love and support. That's what we do on this channel. We show love and support for everybody that takes time to come on and join us, and we likewise support them as well. But Lee, absolute pleasure to have you for this show. Great guest, great conversation, and as I say, hopefully for us it's not the last time that we have you on, and hopefully you get a little bit of a rest before a busy season kicks off.
Try my best. Be on again soon, guys. Thanks for having me. That's great.
Cheers, Lee. Mind yourself. Take care.
Cheers, guys. Thanks now.
Top man.
Lads, it's not over yet, because we've got plenty more questions just for us.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're not leaving.
Brilliant guest. Brilliant time, Lee.
Yeah.
We've been trying for a while to get Lee on the channel, but as we said, so busy. Whether it's Australia, whether it's reporting on all things Newcastle United, whether it's being in Japan and then preparing for the Saturday weekend that starts tomorrow. It's always difficult. This is why it's so difficult as a channel. We have to try and make things work around so many different guests around transfer season. But hey, the three of us, we do the business, and we get the people on that people want. So great to have him on.
Speaking about doing the business, there's a request in from one of the panel here. Chris, you asked for it, you're getting it. Here we go. Here's the Radiator Shed tune. And for every one person that says that music is too loud, I don't like the tune, I get 20 or 30 that says, give me the link to the tune. I want the tune. So just bear that in mind. Right.
Quality.
Yeah.
Right. Shout out to the Radiator Shed and Russ at theradiatorshed.com. If you want to get in contact and need some radiators, and you say loaded 20, you'll get 20% off, and contact them on 077 666 04112. Contact Russ. Right, let's get a few questions for us, and we'll promote a few more things. Loaded meetup, lads. There's a question. We should have a loaded ultra meetup at the stack. Good idea. Should. April. How April sound good?
Yeah. I could do April.
See you there.
See you there. We might say Man United again. Right. So keep that in mind. Question for Pete from Leon. He says, when is the 12th man? When are you back? What show are you on? When are you back? What's happening?
Yeah, so obviously I spoke to Potts the other day. Obviously, I'm not on the Race for Europe. Boo-hoo. He's from what he said, he obviously wants to get me back on. So he's almost praying that Newcastle have a great start to the season to get us back on the Race for Europe, and everything kicks off on the back of that. But I actually won't be joining the kind of like the best of the rest show. I'll be continuing that. I was doing it in the early part of the summer. I was joining the team sort of Friday evening or early evening for a kind of weekend preview. So I'll be continuing doing that. The best of the rest kind of show is on a Thursday, and that sort of clashes with our away days match preview. So the away days match preview obviously takes priority, but I'll be joining them on a Friday doing a little bit of weekend preview with a number of guests. But hopefully it's not too long before you see me back on the Race for Europe. So we'll see.
And Leon, if you like that kind of thing, stay tuned to Loaded.
Yes, absolutely. Coming next week
to be revealed. Yes. Might make that visible soon.
Can we play an intro tune? Have you got the intro tune just as a teaser?
Oh, yeah.
I can try it. Let's see. Okay, let's do it. Pete, it's your choice here. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, Pete, are we happy?
No. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, give me a sec. Here is the intro tune to a new show dropping and loaded next week. That's not it. This is it. Take two. Edit that bit out.
He seems like he's good for you, and he makes you feel like you should. And all your friends say he's the one. His love for you is true. But does he know you only when he sleeps? Or does he know the pictures that you keep? Or does he know the reasons that you cry? Or tell me, does he know where your heart lies? Where it truly lies?
Coming
Love
to
that.
you
Next week. Yeah, we're bringing the top guests from the top table of Premier League football to Loaded Mag NUFC. Hopefully a two weekly show where us boys as a panel will be putting the questions to our guests, and we'll be kicking that off starting next week. So the panel is assembling and we'll be ready to go. So keep an eye out for that one.
Nice one. Kendo had a good one. Good question for Lee. Is it true you've always admired the affordable, stylish, and effective heating installation solutions on offer by the Radiator Shed and rate them number one for customer services? We'll have to ask him next time he's back on. But good question, Kendo. Russ has given you a free radiator for that one. I'm not saying it's a big one or a small one, though. Right, next question. One sec. I thought I had more. I want to shout out a new member.
Yes.
Isaac, a new member. Welcome to Loaded as a Loaded Ultra as well. Stack open today, as we just mentioned for the Loaded Ultra meetup. But some great pictures and some great video footage from people that were in there today.
I have some. I'll throw them in there because not Chris Hall, but Chris, someone that I speak to on social media on a regular basis, actually sent me some pictures that he took. He was one of the first in the stack today. So I meant to give him a shout out, and I will do that now. So this is some images from Chris and I think his partner and his son William that were in the stack, one of the first to enter. He actually sent me a video of him being right at the front when Darren Hills cut the ribbon. But I don't have the video there, but just some images of the stack in play. And William, his son, got to meet Darren Hills and Peter Silverstone. Got a picture with them. So great to see William with those guys in there. A familiar face he managed to meet whilst he was in there.
Hey!
Anyone that we know in there? Maybe
Mr.
someone.
Kennedy.
Yeah, Mr. Kennedy was in there. Of course he was. Where you can get a pint, Mr. Kennedy, you will find. But yeah, great stuff from Chris. Brilliant stuff to send those pictures along. And I did say we'd give him a shout out. But and there it was. So the stack is in play. It is in play, and I'm looking forward to April for the three of us to be together and have a few beers in the stack before, after the game.
I'm not sure.
Other days, whatever.
Right. Also, shout out to Michael McIntyre for the 3 pound super sticker. Cheers, Michael, for that. There's a question then as well. Ian's asked it twice. He says Bruno for captain, and he goes, "If Trips goes, who would you make captain?" I'd make Bruno captain.
Bruno. We said this, didn't we? We said it like 2 months ago. We did say it. We said if there was going to be a new captain, Bruno should be captain. So what better?
I think the maturity and the professionalism he showed at the back end of last season, with the whole. I know it's only avoiding a yellow card, but he was so disciplined, and you could tell he was doing a job for the team. And every time he took to that field, you could just tell he was like, you know, he was carrying the whole team. Do you know what I mean? We were struggling so much, you know, with like injuries and stuff, and Bruno was just churning out the performances week in, week out. He knew he had to be careful. He knew he was one yellow card away from a 2-match suspension, and he was so disciplined, but so good at the same time. And then, you know, we're seeing these interviews with him now, and he's coming out and saying he's committed and all stuff like that. Genuinely, I think we nailed it, boys. I think Bruno should get the captaincy. I really do.
Just to add to that really quickly. So the leadership group is as follows: Jamal Lascelles as captain, Kieran Trippier as vice captain. Then you've got Dan Burn and Wilson as almost like secondary third vice captains, and then you're adding Bruno Guimaraes to that.
Is Pope in there as well, Pete?
As far as I was aware, on the tweet that was put out, he wasn't in that list.
Oh, was he not?
No. However, if you look at that 5, those 4 previous to Bruno Guimaraes are all out of contract next summer. So that leadership group, and I'm not saying I'm not saying they'll all leave, but it could be some of those names we've talked about potentially leaving this summer. So you've got to think that leadership group needs a little bit of a spruce up. It needs a little bit of a glow up, should we say, in preparation for the seasons ahead. So Bruno Guimaraes being added to that almost kind of makes you think that they're preparing ahead. And that's what makes me think that I've got a little bit of confidence that he could stay beyond next season, regardless. Because if they're planning for the future and putting him in, maybe that's what they're thinking. But Nick Pope should be in there, and a few others may well be added in there. Joe Linton, a certain Scouser should be added in there as well, in my opinion, with what he's shown last season, his maturity level. So who knows? But it's an interesting situation. Yeah.
Just want to give a quick shout out to Bill as well, and we'll probably reply back in the chat area. But Bill, we are thinking of you, and mind yourself and take care. I'm glad that you're these kind of shows cheer you up as well. So just take your mind off things. So, but take care,
you know
mate.
what? That's Chris. Bill is you'll see it as well. We always kind of mention it before the show goes live. Bill is always here, one of the first in the chat, one of the first to put a comment in. Huge supporter for the channel. So really sorry to hear that it's more disappointing news medically for you. But look, if we can give you even an hour or two's kind of like respite for what's going on outside of this, then you know that means the world to us. And we're rooting for you, and keep in touch with us. That's what we'd say.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. 2 more things and we'll close up. Right. No, I'm not DJing at Electric Picnic. Electric Picnic is a big festival and a music festival in Ireland, by the way, lads. No, I'm in Salou for that week. I'm DJing somewhere else. Let me say as well. I wanted to ask this one. Where is it? Oh yes. If Botman is a Rolls Royce from Kendo again, what car would you say Maguire is? All I can think is your car, Pete. Harry Maguire. Yeah.
You're doing a disservice to my car, I think.
No, it's just remember that you had to got the car first. I don't. Everything's been running smoothly now, but I just remember at the start.
Oh yeah. The previous version of it, yeah, definitely, 100%. Oh, that's a great question. I don't know.
Peugeot. The Peugeot. Because I had a Peugeot. My first car was a Peugeot 206, and when I was selling that car, there was bits of string holding it together.
That's
what was that Peugeot.
See, we pronounce it over here. We pronounce it Peugeot.
Peugeot, not Peugeot.
But no, I have no idea which one's right. But that's not a bad shout. Someone's put Skoda in there.
Stewie must have gone with a Volkswagen Passat.
Very particular.
Very
particular. Hey, Summer.
Hey, Summer.
That's a great question. Keep putting them in the comments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boys,
I'm not going to say my car. I'm not going to say my car. I don't want to give my car the disrespect. Knowing me, my tires will probably go flat tomorrow off the back of that if I disrespect it.
Right, we'll think about that one. We'll think about that.
Yeah.
Right, that's pretty much it, lads. We're going to wrap up. We're gone over time. Actually, I better give a shout out because I'll be lynched otherwise. Al from the Irish Mags, they're actually gone live at 9. So anyone that wants to pop over after the show and we'll catch the Irish Mags, tell them we sent you, though. Tell them we sent you. Make sure you mention we sent you that way, and give a shout out to Chris, Al, and Paul.
Put a tune in the chat.
Tune.
There's our signature. Tune. Not that.
That'll freak them out.
Not that zebra. Get rid of that zebra. Tune. There we go. Tune's all over.
Tune. Love it.
Oh, by the way, Dad, just before we shoot, we've got a new member, Warren Dinning.
Oh,
Thank
Warren.
you, Warren. Good man.
Welcome, Warren.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, Warren.
Loaded Ultra. Ultra.
You'll be in that.
Summer's going to sing us out with a song, I think. Are you, Summer?
Oh no, I don't know about that.
No pressure.
But no, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say what I was going to say. I might tell you off air.
Rightio, let's go with the house instead. Right. Good night, everyone. The next time you see me, you might see me in Salou, depending on what's happening. But
great holiday, guys.
Cheers, boys. Cheers, everyone. And but we will be back pretty soon. Can't remember what day, but we'll be back pretty soon. Don't worry about
back for Gay.
Oh yeah. Any breaking news will be there, but yeah, lots to come.
Ready to roll. Right. Good night, everyone. Have a good one. Take care.
How you like?